We've all been there and it sucks. Some airline has canceled or delayed your flight and now you're stuck at the airport. In just the US alone, over 195,000 flights were canceled. And only last year. This happened to me last year when I was flying from Copenhagen, Denmark to Gdansk, Poland, when Wizz Air delayed my flight 23 hours. European regulation had me quickly booked onto another flight, compensated €250 or $270, and my hotel and food paid for. We never had these luxuries in the US until last week. Here are your new rights and how to get paid when airlines screw over your plans.
Welcome to Luke Salwia, the place to learn how to live and travel better.
In this video, I'll be explaining what your rights are and how you're protected when traveling in the US, how to get paid, what to do if an airline doesn't pay you, and when you'll be getting paid. First, what are your rights? Before this new rule, which has the fun name and was signed into law as the FAA Reauthorization Act, each airline was allowed to have its own refund standards. This made it hard for you and me to figure out when we could get a refund, for what, and for how much, because each airline had its own policy. Airlines could also change their plans at will, say if they had a spike in cancellations or delays. Now, everything is standardized. Woohoo! Significant was never defined until this regulation, and now we know exactly what qualifies for a refund and what doesn't. Alright, here are your rights. Passengers are entitled to a refund for
1. Canceled or significantly changed flights.
So what does significant mean? Here are the unique circumstances where it applies.
We'll use the example of a plane taking off from DFW Airport in Dallas at 11 a.m. and landing at IAD, Washington Dulles Airport, at 1 p.m. where you're flying business class. The first situation is when departure or arrival times are more than 3 hours late domestically and 6 hours late internationally. On the example flight, this means you now land at 5 p.m. instead of 1 p.m. The second situation is when departures or arrival happen at a different airport than expected. Instead of landing at Washington Dulles Airport, your flight now lands at BWI, Baltimore Washington Airport, instead. The third situation is an increase in the number of connections. For example, your flight was originally direct, but now you have a layover in MSY, New Orleans. The next situation is where you are downgraded to a lower class of service. You were originally in business class, but are now in economy, even though you paid for business. The final situation is when you have connections at different airports or flights on different planes that are less accessible or accommodating to a person with a disability. In this case, if a new flight no longer offers a wheelchair service onto a plane.
For each of these circumstances, you are entitled to a refund. Airlines will probably offer you a hotel credit with a meal voucher if your flight is canceled and rescheduled for the next day, but also know you're entitled to a refund instead. Ask for it from the airline if you only see the option to take the new flight, meal voucher, and hotel if you don't want to take the new flight. Stick around until the end of the video and I'll tell you how to ask the airline for a refund and what to do if they don't give it to you properly. The next event you're entitled to a refund for is
2. Significantly delayed baggage return.
In this case, meaning 12 hours of the domestic flight arriving at the gate and 15 to 30 hours of the international flight arriving at the gate, depending on how long the flight is. The final new event where you're entitled to a refund is
3. Extra services not provided.
If you paid for an extra service like Wi-Fi, seat selection, or in-flight entertainment and the airline doesn't provide it, you're also entitled to a refund. Alright, on to the next part, how to get paid. According to the new law, airlines must automatically issue refunds. On paper, it seems like an easy process. However, airlines may not tell you the full story, so it's up to you to know your full rights. So what does this mean, and how can you be taken advantage of by the airlines?
When Wizz Air canceled my flight to Gdansk and rescheduled me, they told me I'd be staying at a hotel in the city I was in, Copenhagen. I didn't want this because I had an apartment in the city and just wanted to stay there instead, so I asked for food credits instead of a hotel, and they were required to give it to me. Airlines probably have contracts set up to put their passengers in specific hotels to save money when situations like this occur, so it's more profitable for them to give you a hotel rather than to reimburse you for your food choices, which I used to buy my weekly groceries and still got my refund.
Examples aside, Be sure to know all the rules I've explained in this video to make sure you get everything you're entitled to. Going back about how to get paid, the airline or gate agent should reach out to you via email or in person if you're still at the airport about how you can get your refund. So what happens when an airline doesn't pay you like they should? If you know your rights and are guaranteed a refund, use the Air Travel Service complaint or comment form to file a request against the airline. This form is submitted to the U.S. Department of Transportation, the U.S. DOT, and they'll go after the airline for you. I know, you're probably thinking the government is slow or they'll probably lose your request or something else like that. But under the new Secretary of the DOT, this has changed. They've issued over $174 million in penalties against airlines since 2021, compared to the just $71 million in penalties against airlines between 1994 and 2020. Things are moving in that department at least. Woohoo! This brings us to our last section, when to expect the payment. According to the new law, airlines must issue refunds within 7 days of payments made via credit card and within 20 calendar days of other payment options. This must be paid in cash or the other original form of payment, not credits or vouchers or anything else like that. Cold, hard cash. Woohoo! You'll also receive the full amount, including all taxes and fees imposed. The law goes into effect on the 25th of June, 2024, and airlines will have 6 months to implement the automatic payment service, so we'll have to wait a bit. Thank you for watching. Things are changing quickly with regulation like this, so if you haven't already subscribed, make sure to do so to keep up with new videos and content.